Hey, what's going on? And welcome to video 4 in our series of creating a Flutter to-do list task application using the MVVM design pattern. This is going to be take 2 because I just recorded this whole video and realized I had no audio. Now I definitely do have audio, so let's get this going again. Hopefully I do this just as well as I did last time. Yeah, let's kind of take a look at what it is we're going to be building in this part. So currently we have everything kind of laid out, and we have our floating action button, but when you currently tap it, nothing happens. What we want to do is have that tap actually open up a bottom sheet view, and within that bottom sheet view, we want to display a text field that can capture information and add a new task to our list of tasks within our view model based on whatever it adds in here. Also, if it doesn't have anything in the text field, it should also just dismiss that entire thing whenever we tap the done button. So that's what we're going to be building today, but if you can notice, our trash can also uses a bottom sheet, and because we want these two to look consistent, what we're going to be doing is building a form of a reusable component that will take in a view that could just be displayed within a bottom sheet. Let's just kind of get into that. The first thing we're going to want to do is hop into our app view model, and within this app view model, ignore this add task, that's just what remained from the last video. We'll add that here in just a moment. Within this app view model, we're going to create a new void function called, bottom sheet builder. And our bottom sheet builder will take in a widget of a bottom sheet view, and it'll take in a build context, and then what we're going to do is use a Flutter provided page route that shows a bottom sheet called show modal bottom sheet. We're going to pass in the context, and for the builder, we are going to, and for our builder, we're going to return we're just going to return the widget that we're passing into it. Now the reason we're doing it like this, let me just go ahead and return the bottom sheet view. Now the reason why we're doing it this way is so that way the shape that we're using on our bottom sheet remains consistent throughout the application. And instead of having to create a bottom sheet in multiple different places, what we're basically going to have here is a reusable way of creating a styled bottom sheet. And we only ever have to update it in one place for it to update everywhere. And what is actually going to be nested inside of the bottom sheet is just the view that we pass in, that is the bottom sheet view. That will make more sense as we kind of build this out if that is leaving you confused at all. So within the show modal bottom sheet, well, actually before we get started on that, let's just go ahead and go back into our add task view. And for our add task view, inside of the onPressed function, let's just go view model dot bottom sheet builder, which is that function that we had just created, and let's pass in a empty container. And for the container, let's just give it a height of 100, and let's give it a color of colors dot, we're already using red, let's just use amber, and there we go. We're just going to pass in a placeholder view for the time being. Again, this is just what we're going to be passing in to display the text field in the future. For now, we're just going to pass in a container just to show some progress here. So if we go ahead and save all, make sure everything is saved and reload, when we tap this plus button, what we see now is this modal bottom sheet that pops up. Now what we're going to want to do is actually provide, the reason why we're making this a reusable component is so that way we could give a corner radius that's consistent throughout the entire application. So if we go back into our application view model and we go into our show modal bottom sheet, if we're going to go ahead and provide a shape, and the shape is going to be a rounded rectangle border, and that rounded rectangle border will have a border radius of border radius dot circular, and we'll pass in 40 into there. The last thing we're going to want to do, if we just only have a shape, it's not actually going to clip that border radius unless we provide a clip behavior. So for clip behavior, let's just go clip.anti-alias with save layer. So now, if we recreate that widget, what we're going to see is our modal bottom sheet basically now has that border radius clipped onto the entire view, and our view is just being passed in the form of a widget into the function. So that container that we created earlier that has that height of 100 and the color amber is just being passed in as a parameter and is being displayed inside of here. So we can pass in our delete bottom sheet view, we can pass in our add view and our settings view into this function, and it will just show our bottom sheet and work basically every time, and it will work the same way and look the same way. So with this being done now, we can go into our views folder, and let's go ahead and create a new folder called bottom sheets. Now this bottom sheets folder is where all of our bottom sheet views are going to be stored, again, just to kind of keep things organized. And within that bottom sheets folder, let's create a new Dart file called add task bottom sheet view.dart. And within that add task bottom sheet view.dart file, let's create a new stateless widget that's called add task bottom sheet view. And for this, let's go back into our add task view, and instead of passing in that container, let's just go ahead and pass in that entire bottom sheet view that we're going to be creating here in just a moment. Again, the reason for doing this is so that way this folder or this current file doesn't get too crammed with a bunch of information and so it doesn't get difficult to read. We'll keep everything really modular. So we'll pass in that add task bottom sheet view, and we can make that a constant since it doesn't accept any parameters and is a stateless widget. So now if we reload, we notice it doesn't actually pop up anything that we have created just yet. It's just going to pass in a default bottom sheet because we haven't really created anything within that add task bottom sheet widget just yet. So first things first, because we're going to be directly editing data inside of this bottom sheet, again, if you take a look at what we're trying to go for here, we're actually going to be editing data every single time we open up that bottom sheet, right? As long as we have data to enter. Because we're doing that, we're going to want to have a reference to our view model. And the way we've been doing that in this application is by using a consumer. So we'll continue that pattern here. Where we'll have a consumer, and that consumer will, again, we have to be explicit with a type. So we're going to pass in the app view model as a type. And then for the builder, again, we're just going to go context value child with the brackets, change the value to view model so we know what value we're referring to. And then within this, we're going to return a container. So this is going to be where we actually return our view that's going to be inside of the add task bottom sheet view. So let's just go ahead and return container. And the height that we provide this container with is what's going to be the height of our actual bottom sheet view. So if I give this a height of 100, or 80 rather, if I give this a height of 80, what you'll see is that when we open this, the height will be 80. Now this is really important because this is really important because this is where we're going to be able to directly edit our height. So if you ever need to update that, if we go height, we change that to 120, you can see that updates that right down there. So for the child of this container, let's go ahead and create a child that is a text field. And our text field, let's see, why is it upset? We're going to need to update, or we're going to make sure that we have the material package installed. So within our text field, we're going to make sure that we have a text editing controller. A text editing controller basically just keeps track of what is inside of that text field. So let's create a new final. Let's actually just create it underneath the widget. Let's go final text editing controller, and let's call it our entry controller. And let's just go ahead and set that to a new instance of a text editing controller. So now within our text field, let's go ahead and just make this a little bit easier to read. Within our text field, we can now pass in that controller that we had just created. So now this entry controller is what keeps track of our the text that we have inside of our text field. So if I refresh this, you can see that we now have a text field. But you notice that when we actually tap into that text field, what we have is this keyboard that kind of pops up over our text field, obscuring our view of the text field. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to wrap our container inside of a padding. Now the reason why we're going to want to do that is because we're going to want to grab however high or whatever the height of our keyboard is, we're going to want to add a padding to the bottom of our bottom sheet view to push it up that far. So if we go ahead and wrap this container in a padding, we could say, we can just replace this with edge. We'll set our padding equal to edge insets, and then we're only adding a padding to the bottom. And then the padding, or where we're going to get the height from the keyboard from, is by doing a media query using our context, and then using the view insets bottom height. So now what's going to happen is you're going to notice that when we tap into our bottom sheet for our text editing, or for our text or our task entry, and then we tap on the text field, it's going to push up that bottom sheet however high this keyboard is. Now one other thing to notice about our finished application is that this is just by default selected whenever we tap on this button. And the way to do that is for text field, we're just going to go ahead and set autofocus to true. You know, while we're here, let's just set autocorrect to false because that's always annoying. So let's just set that to false. So now what's going to happen whenever we hit this plus button is it's going to automatically foreground our keyboard, and it's going to push up the actual bottom sheet above the keyboard. So now what we can do is just work on some styling for our text field. So what we're going to want to do is make sure that our text is aligned horizontally and vertically. So let's go text align, and let's just do text align.center. And then for text align vertical, we'll set that equal to text align vertical.center as well. Now if we replace that, we're going to see that we have this text just here in the middle. The next thing we're going to want to do is set our cursor color to be the color of our application's darkest color. So instead of being a blue, because blue doesn't really appear anywhere else in our application, let's just set our cursor color to being our view model's color level 4. So now when we save that and reload it, we'll see that that turns into a darker color. But this text also doesn't really meet or fit the application's theme in color or style. So let's go ahead and set the text style for all the text that appears inside of our text field to style, and we'll set that to text style. And let's set the color of our text to, let's see what looks good. We'll set that to the darkest color as well. So we'll say the color is viewModel.colorLevel4. And let's set the font weight of the text that we type into that text field to be font weight.w500, which is just a nice kind of semi-bold, but not too bold look. So has a little bit more width to the text. The next thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and provide an actual input decoration so that we can remove this ugly blue border and set the background color and set the foreground color to our, foreground and background color to our text field. So the way we're going to do that is just by providing a decoration. And our decoration is going to be an input decoration. And that input decoration will have a content padding just for the bottom. So we'll go edge insets dot only bottom, and we'll give it a little bit of an inset, just kind of push it up a little bit. The next thing we're going to do is provide a filled value. So this is going to allow the text field to be filled with a color. And we're going to set that to true. And we're going to say that the fill color that we want is equal to our view model dot color level 2. So kind of like in the middle of our colors, it's kind of like a nice shade of gray. If I replace that, you'll see that it changes the color. The next thing we're going to want to do is provide a border. So in order to get rid of this border, we're going to have to set the width and the style for the border to none. So within our input decoration, underneath our fill color, let's provide a border of outline input border. And let's just create a new one with a border radius of, we'll go border radius dot circular, and we'll give it 20. That's going to give our input field a bit of a corner radius, so it's not just like a squared look. And then we'll also set the border side, so it's what's actually causing the border to be blue. We'll set the border side to a constant border side. And we'll create a new border side where the width is 0 and the style is border side or border style dot none. So here's what our text field looks like now. And if we replace this, what we're going to see is that that blue border on that input field or the text field goes away, and it just looks like it kind of matches the application's theme. So the last thing we're going to want to do is wrap our text field in a size box that represents how wide and how tall we want our text field to be. So we're currently not really providing any information for that. It's just kind of getting it through the parent widget. So let's go ahead and wrap our text field inside of a sized box. And inside of here, let's provide a height of 40. And let's provide a width of 250. So now if we refresh that, we're not going to see much change because then we have to wrap the sized box into a center to put it into the center of the available space. So if we wrap that in a center, if we save it and reload, we can see now that it actually inputs itself into the very middle of our widget, and it's starting to look a little bit more like what we want it to look like. Now, the very last part is getting our task added to our view model every time we are done with entering in the text. So what we're going to do is within the text field, there's this onSubmitted method that we could provide. So go to onSubmitted, and then within the brackets, we could basically, whenever we tap this done button, what's going to happen is this onSubmitted, whatever we have in here is going to be called. So we currently do not have any functionality to add a task to our view model just yet. So what we're going to want to do is go back to our app view model and then add a function that we saw earlier, and we'll call it void, and we'll call it add task. And we're going to take in a variable of task, new task, and what we're going to do is add it to our list of tasks. So we'll go tasks.add, and then we'll add new task. Now again, because our app view model extends change notifier, and all of our application is really wrapped in using the provider package, we're going to want to go ahead and notify our listeners every single time we make a change to the data within our view model. So everything that is consuming our application's view model and is using the data within it, every time we call a function and notify the listeners and the data updates, the widgets that use the data that we have will automatically update. So we don't have to worry about any callbacks or anything like that. Provider makes it really easy to update our widgets whenever our data changes. So now we can hop back into our add task bottom sheet view widget. And within onSubmitted, we're just going to run a check to make sure that our text editor controller has some text in it. So because our entry controller actually has the data that our text field has, we can just check to see if it currently has any text. Now the way we do that is we can just do a conditional statement here and say if entry controller dot text dot is not empty. So if the text field is not empty, what we're going to do is create a new task. Now the task is going to be created, we'll say var, we can just say task, new task. We're also going to want to import, task from our task model. We're going to say new task is equal to task, and we're going to set the title of our task to the string that's provided by our entry controller, .text, and then we will default the boolean to false because by default the task is not completed. Now what we're going to want to do is use our view model to add the task, so we can reference that view model that we're getting as a result of being wrapped in a consumer, and then run add task, and we can just go ahead and add that new task to our list of tasks within our view model. Now the last thing we're going to want to do is just kind of clear our entry controller, so that way the next time we open it, it will have a blank slate to start from. So we'll just go entry controller.clear, and by doing that, we basically now have an empty entry controller and a task added. Now the last thing we're going to want to do is pop our current navigator, pop the current route that we're on. So we're going to remove this widget from view. What we're going to do is navigator dot of context, and regardless of whether or not there's any text, the done button will just dismiss the done button will just dismiss the bottom sheet. So we'll just go dot pop, and that should really just be it. Obviously, because we don't have anything else built out just yet, we're not going to be seeing the data represented in our application. So in the next video, we'll be working on going forward with actually building out this list view section, so that way we can see the tasks that we are creating. But with our current setup, if we just kind of go through what we just built, if we reload our application, when we tap this floating action button, if we enter in some text, what we're going to have happen is it's just going to actually add that task that we just created into our view model, and it's going to dismiss that bottom sheet. We also created a bottom sheet that can be reusable. So when we have to implement the delete button, it'll be pretty simple just to create another view and just to stick it into the bottom sheet section, which is available right here. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to working with y'all on the next video to actually get some of these tasks displayed on our application. Peace.